The galaxy remembers everything. Every act of kindness, every moment of cruelty, every debt unpaid. For 300 years, the Zephyrian Empire believed humans had forgotten. They were wrong. What started as a simple rescue mission to save a dying species would become the most dangerous mistake the galaxy's greatest empire ever made. Because humans don't just remember kindness, they multiply it. And when humanity finally had the power to repay an ancient debt, the entire universe would learn why you should never underestimate a species that considers loyalty a sacred duty. This is the story of how one act of mercy created the most feared force in galactic history. This is the story of humanity's payback. The dying planet Earth hung in space like a broken marble, its blue surface marred by brown scars where oceans once gleamed. Captain Sarah Chun pressed her face against the observation deck window of the human colony ship New Dawn, watching her homeworld shrink behind them. 3 billion humans packed into massive vessels, fleeing the climate disaster that had finally overwhelmed their technology. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," announced Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. His voice carried the exhaustion they all felt after 6 months of desperate flight through space. Sarah turned from the window, her reflection ghosting across the star-filled darkness. Source: unknown configuration. The signal is strange, like nothing in our databases. Sarah made her way to the bridge, her magnetic boots clanking against the metal deck plates. The New Dawn was one of 12 colony ships, each carrying 250 million refugees. They had fuel for maybe another year, food for 8 months, and no destination that could support human life. "Play it," Sarah ordered. The bridge speakers crackled with static, then cleared to reveal a voice unlike anything they had ever heard. It was musical, with harmonic undertones that seemed to resonate in their bones. "Human vessels, this is Navigator Kethvar of the Zephyrian Exploration Corps. We have monitored your situation. Your species faces extinction. We offer sanctuary." Sarah exchanged glances with her senior officers. They had sent distress signals across every frequency for months without response. Now, when hope seemed lost, aliens were offering help. "How do we know you're real?" Sarah transmitted back. "Because," the voice replied, and suddenly their view screen filled with the image of a massive ship. "We are here." The Zephyrian vessel defied human understanding of engineering. It looked like a crystal cathedral grown in zero gravity, its translucent spires stretching for kilometers. Smaller ships detached from its hull like seeds from a dandelion, graceful craft that moved with impossible elegance toward the human fleet. "We are the Zephyrians," the voice continued as a figure materialized on their main screen. The alien was tall and slender, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow from within. Her arms moved in flowing gestures as it spoke, and its large eyes held what looked remarkably like compassion. "We have watched many species face what you now face. Most do not survive, but you show promise." "What kind of promise?" Sarah asked. "You fight extinction itself rather than each other. When your world died, you did not wage war over the remaining resources. Instead, you built these ships together. You saved not just your own tribes, but all tribes. This is rare." Sarah felt her throat tighten. It was true. When the great storms came and the last crops failed, humanity could have turned to violence. Instead, they had pooled their remaining resources and knowledge. Rich and poor, every nation and culture, all working toward the single goal of preserving their species. "We offer you 3 worlds," Kethvar continued. "They orbit a stable star, with atmospheres your people can breathe. The soil will grow your crops. You will live. What do you want in return?" asked Commander Rodriguez, Sarah's second in command. His voice carried the wariness of someone who had learned that nothing came free. Kethvar's expression showed what might have been amusement. "You humans, so suspicious. We want nothing. This is what we do. We find worthy species and help them survive. It is our purpose." Over the following days, the Zephyrian ships guided the human fleet toward their new home. Sarah found herself in frequent communication with Kethvar, learning about this strange species that traveled the galaxy looking for civilizations to save. "How many species have you helped?" she asked during one of their conversations. "Two sons," Kitvar replied. "We have spread life across the galaxy for 50,000 of your years. It brings us joy to see consciousness flourish. And you never ask for anything? What could you give us that we do not already have? We master matter and energy. We have ships that can cross the galaxy in moments. We live for millennia. What we treasure is the diversity of thought, the different ways species approach existence. Your survival enriches the universe." The three worlds the Zephyrians had promised turn out to be everything they had described, and more. Kepler 442b, Kepler 438b, and Kepler 452b, worlds that Earth's astronomers had only dreamed of reaching. Each had its own character. The first was a water world with vast archipelagos. The second was mountainous, with deep valleys perfect for cities. The third was the most Earth-like, with broad continents and familiar seasons. As the human fleets entered orbit around these new homes, Sarah watched the Zephyrian ships prepare to depart. She opened a channel to Kethvar one final time. "How can we ever repay this?" she asked. "Live," Kethvar said simply. "Grow. Become who you are meant to be. Perhaps someday, when you have the power, you will help another species as we have helped you. That is payment enough." The Zephyrian ships disappeared into hyperspace, leaving humanity to begin their new lives. Sarah stood on the observation deck of the orbital station they had built, watching the first shuttles descend to the surface of their new world. Children pressed their faces against the windows, seeing blue skies and green plants for the first time in their lives. "Captain," Torres called from the communication station. "We're getting reports from the surface. The soil composition is perfect. The water is pure. The atmosphere has exactly the right oxygen content. It's like these worlds were made for us." Sarah nodded, but something nagged at her. She pulled up the galactic database the Zephyrians had provided, searching for information about their species. What she found disturbed her. The Zephyrians weren't just explorers and rescuers. They were also the galaxy's dominant military power. Their technology was so advanced that most civilizations consider them gods. They had ended wars with their mere presence, toppled empires that displeased them, and enforced a kind of peace across thousands of worlds. But they had also shown tremendous kindness. The database was full of stories like humanity's, dying species saved at the last moment, given new worlds and the chance to thrive. The Zephyrians seemed to be exactly what they claimed, benevolent gardeners of galactic civilization. Sarah tried to push aside her unease. They were safe now. They had a chance to rebuild, to become something greater than they had ever been on Earth. She watched the first human settlements take shape on the world below and allowed herself to hope. 50 years passed. The human colonies thrived beyond anyone's wildest expectations. They had learned to work with their new environments, building cities that blended seamlessly with alien landscapes. Their population had grown from 3 billion to 8 billion, spread across 3 worlds that had become more beautiful with their presence. But humanity had also changed in other ways. The experience of nearly losing their species had transformed their culture. They became obsessed with knowledge, with understanding how the universe worked. They wanted to ensure they would never again be helpless in the face of extinction. Dr. James Liu stood in his laboratory on New Terra, the most Earth-like of their 3 worlds, studying a fragment of Zephyrian technology that had been left behind. After decades of reverse engineering, humans were beginning to understand how their savior's incredible devices worked. "The power source is what amazes me," he said to his research partner, Dr. Amara Okafor. "They can extract energy directly from the quantum vacuum. It's like they've learned to harvest the universe's own fundamental forces." "What amazes me more is the computational substrate," Amara replied, pointing to what looked like empty space, but which their instruments revealed to be a complex matrix of quantum processors. They're not just using quantum computers. They're They're using the structure of space-time itself as a processing medium. If we could master this, James said quietly, we could do things that would seem like magic to our ancestors. The question is whether we should, Amara said. This level of technology, it could change everything about who we are as a species. James looked through the laboratory window at the human city beyond. New Geneva stretched toward the horizon, its organic architecture flowing like a living thing. Gardens and parks wound between residential towers where families who had never known want or hunger lived in comfort. It was paradise, but it was a paradise built on the charity of others. We can't stay children forever, James said. Someday, we might need to stand on our own, or help someone else like the Zephyrians helped us. The work continued. Human scientists, driven by curiosity and the memory of helplessness, slowly unlocked the secrets of Zephyrian technology. They learned to manipulate matter at the quantum level, to fold space for faster-than-light travel, to build artificial intelligences that could process information at cosmic scales. 100 years after the rescue, humanity took its first tentative steps back into galactic civilization. Human ships, sleek vessels that combined Zephyrian principles with human innovation, began to explore nearby star systems. They made contact with other species, establishing trade relationships, and learning about the wider galaxy. What they discovered was troubling. The galaxy was vast and beautiful, full of wonders beyond imagination. But it was also dominated by the Zephyrian Empire in ways that hadn't been apparent from their limited databases. The Zephyrians didn't rule through conquest or oppression. They ruled through dependence. Every species they had saved found themselves subtly constrained. They were given technology, but not the understanding to improve it. They were granted worlds, but only those the Zephyrians chose for them. They were allowed to flourish, but only within carefully defined limits. Captain Maria Santos, granddaughter of one of the original refugees, stood on the bridge of the human exploration vessel Prometheus as they approached a Zephyrian monitoring station at the edge of human space. "They're scanning us," reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Kim. "Expected," Maria replied. "We filed all the proper requests. We're operating within the boundaries they set for us." But as the scan completed, she felt a familiar chill. It was the same feeling her grandmother had described when looking at their dying Earth from space, the feeling of being utterly dependent on forces beyond their control. The Zephyrian monitoring station was a work of art, a crystalline structure that seemed to sing with harmonic frequencies. A figure appeared on their main screen, not Kethvar, who had passed away decades ago, but another Zephyrian with the same elegant bearing and compassionate eyes. "Human vessel, I am Sector Administrator Thynel. Your exploration permit allows travel to designated systems only. Please confirm your destination." "The Vega system," Maria replied. "We're conducting botanical surveys." "Approved. Safe travels, humans. May your journey bring wisdom." The connection ended, but Maria stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Everything had been perfectly polite, perfectly reasonable, and yet she felt like a child asking permission to play in the backyard. "Captain," Lieutenant Kim asked. "Orders?" Maria looked out at the stars, thinking of her grandmother's stories about the last days of Earth, about humanity packed into refugee ships, utterly dependent on alien charity for their survival. They had rebuilt and thrived, but had they truly become independent? Or had they simply grown comfortable in their cage? "Set course for Vega," she said, "and start a classified file. I want to know everything we can learn about Zephyrian history. All of it, not just what they've chosen to share." As the Prometheus jumped to hyperspace, Maria made a decision that would echo across centuries. Humanity would be grateful to the Zephyrians forever. But gratitude didn't mean they had to remain children. It was time to grow up. And when humanity finally matured, the galaxy would discover just how dangerous a truly grateful species could be. 200 years after the rescue, the first human emissary arrived at the Zephyrian homeworld of Zephyros Prime. Dr. Elena Vasquez, great-great-granddaughter of a refugee from Earth, walked through corridors of living crystal toward an audience with the Zephyrian High Council. She carried with her humanity's gift, the complete synthesis of human and Zephyrian technology, advances that neither species could have achieved alone. It was a treasure beyond price, and humanity was offering to share it freely. But Elena knew, as did every human leader, that this gift came with a message. Humanity had learned the Zephyrians' own lessons too well. They had become gardeners of their own destiny. The age of dependence was ending. The age of equality was about to begin. And in the deepest vaults of human space, in laboratories hidden from Zephyrian sensors, human scientists worked on technologies that would reshape the galaxy itself. Technologies born not from conquest or domination, but from the simple human belief that no one should ever again face extinction alone. The Zephyrians had saved humanity. Now humanity was preparing to save everyone else, whether they wanted saving or not. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the crystalline corridors of Zephyros Prime, her footsteps echoing with musical tones as she approached the High Council chambers. The Zephyrian homeworld was a masterpiece of living architecture, where buildings grew like coral reefs and streets flowed like rivers of light. After 2 centuries of studying their technology, humans finally understood how impossible it all was. The Zephyrians hadn't just mastered physics. They had rewritten it. Elena carried a data crystal containing humanity's greatest secret, the complete integration of human innovation with Zephyrian principles. Where the Zephyrians had learned to command matter and energy through harmonic resonance, humans had discovered something else entirely. They had learned to command the quantum foundation of reality itself through pure mathematics. Ambassador Elena, came a familiar harmonic voice as she entered the council chamber. High Counselor Vethmaran stood at the center of a circular room that defied geometry, its walls somehow showing the entire galaxy as if viewed from outside space itself. Welcome to Zephyros Prime. We are honored by humanity's first official embassy to our world. Elena bowed respectfully. The Zephyrians deserved every courtesy. They had saved her species from extinction. But courtesy didn't require honesty about everything. High Counselor, my people wish to present a gift in recognition of your boundless generosity 3 centuries ago. Elena held up the data crystal. We have made discoveries we believe will interest you. Vethmiran's 4 arms moved in patterns of polite curiosity. Humans have always shown remarkable ingenuity. Please share your findings. Elena activated the crystal, and holographic displays filled the chamber. Mathematical equations flowed like waterfalls of light, showing the theoretical framework humans had developed. But she was careful to show only the surface layer, the applications, not the underlying principles. We have learned to predict quantum fluctuations with perfect accuracy, Elena explained. This allows us to extract energy more efficiently than traditional vacuum harvesting. We can also use these predictions to create computational matrices that process information faster than space-time-based systems. The equations showed improvements to Zephyrian technology of 30 to 40%, significant advances, but not revolutionary ones. Elena watched Vethmaran's reaction carefully. The Zephyrian leader studied the displays with the focused attention of someone trying to understand a new language. Fascinating, Vethmaran said finally. Your mathematical approach is unique. We have always worked through harmonic resonance with natural forces. You appear to be calculating the forces themselves. Different perspectives leading to different solutions, Elena agreed. We hope these improvements might prove useful, perhaps in your ongoing mission to help struggling civilizations. Indeed, your gift is generous, as we have come to expect from humanity. Vethmaran gestured, and the displays shifted to show recent Zephyrian rescue operations. Just last century, we relocated the Altarian species from their dying star system. They now thrive in the Centaurus cluster. The cycle continues. Elena nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. The data crystal she had presented contained real advances, carefully chosen ones that would help the Zephyrians become more efficient at their galactic gardening. But hidden beneath those obvious improvements lay something else entirely. Each equation contained subtle quantum markers, invisible tracking protocols that would let humanity monitor every piece of Zephyrian technology that incorporated their gift. For the first time since their rescue, humans would have real intelligence on the scope and capabilities of the Zephyrian Empire. "There is something else we wish to discuss," Elena said carefully. "My government would like to establish formal diplomatic relations with the Empire, perhaps create cultural exchange programs, joint scientific research initiatives." Vethmiron's expression showed something that might have been surprise. "This is unusual. Most species we assist prefer to develop independently within their assigned territories. Direct integration with imperial structures is typically reserved for member civilizations." Member civilizations? Those who have achieved technological parity with ourselves and chosen to join the Empire as equals rather than protectorates. Vethmiron's tone suggested this was an extremely rare occurrence. It has been many millennia since the last such elevation. Elena felt her pulse quicken, but kept her expression neutral. What would such elevation require? A species must demonstrate not only advanced technology, but wisdom in its use. The power to reshape worlds brings with it the responsibility to do so justly. Many civilizations achieve the former but fail utterly at the latter. The conversation continued for several hours, ranging over topics from philosophy to physics. Elena found Vethmiron to be exactly what the Zephyrians had always seemed: genuinely wise, deeply compassionate, and utterly convinced of the righteousness of their galactic role. When the formal meetings concluded, Elena was given quarters in the diplomatic sector and freedom to explore the capital city. What she saw there confirmed everything human intelligence had suspected about Zephyrian society. The city was populated not just by Zephyrians, but by representatives of dozens of species. Tall, insectoid Krillians worked alongside flowing, gaseous Nethons and crystalline Vorthan academics. But Elena noticed something troubling in their interactions. Every non-Zephyrian she observed showed subtle signs of deference. A Krillian engineer paused respectfully when a Zephyrian passed. Nethon diplomats waited for Zephyrian approval before making decisions. Vorthan scientists asked permission before conducting experiments. It wasn't oppression in any traditional sense. The Zephyrians were unfailingly kind, generous, and patient, but the dynamic was unmistakable: parent and child, teacher and student, guardian and ward. Elena spent 3 weeks on Zephyros Prime, attending conferences on galactic development and meeting with various department heads. She learned that the Zephyrian Empire consisted of over 50,000 member species, with another 100,000 civilizations under their protection. The scope was staggering, a significant percentage of all intelligent life in the galaxy. But she also learned something else. The Zephyrians genuinely believed they were doing the right thing. They saw themselves as shepherds protecting their flock from the harsh realities of a dangerous universe. They had convinced themselves that their wards were happier and safer under protection than they would be on their own. "The galaxy is vast and hostile," explained Director Keltharod during a tour of the Imperial Planning Center. "Young civilizations face threats they cannot imagine. Stellar collapse, gamma-ray bursts, marauding machine intelligences, reality-warping entities from dimensional rifts. Without guidance, most species destroy themselves within a few centuries of achieving spaceflight." Elena watched holographic displays showing galactic threat assessments and intervention schedules. The Zephyrians were responding to an average of 30 galactic-scale catastrophes per year. Their rescue and relocation operations were constant and massive. "How do you make such decisions?" Elena asked. "Which species to save, which threats to address first? We have developed sophisticated algorithms that weigh factors like species potential, cultural complexity, technological promise, and population size, Kelthara replied. Every sentient life is precious, but with limited resources, we must prioritize. What if a species refused your help, chose to face extinction rather than accept rescue? Kelthara's expression showed genuine confusion. Why would anyone choose death over life? We offer not just survival, but prosperity, protection from cosmic forces beyond their comprehension. Why would any rational being refuse such generosity? Elena realized then that the Zephyrians had a fatal blind spot. In 50,000 years of being the galaxy's supreme civilization, they had forgotten what it meant to choose dignity over safety, independence over comfort. They couldn't imagine that anyone might prefer the risk of freedom to the certainty of protection. When Elena returned to human space, she brought with her complete intelligence on Zephyrian capabilities, political structure, and strategic thinking. But more importantly, she brought confirmation of humanity's deepest fears. The Zephyrians weren't malicious, but they were absolute. Their empire wasn't built on conquest, but on the gradual erosion of choice. They saved civilizations and then slowly, kindly, inexorably made those civilizations unable to save themselves. Elena's report landed like a bomb in the human leadership councils. Admiral Sarah Martinez, descendant of the original refugee captain, read it 3 times before calling an emergency session of the Confederation Defense Committee. They're planning to integrate us, she announced to the assembled military and civilian leaders. Not immediately, but eventually. They see our technological progress as a sign that we're maturing toward membership in their empire. Would that be so terrible? Asked Dr. James Lou Harrison, the chief science advisor. Membership implies equality, not subjugation. Does it? Elena challenged. Every member species I observed showed the same deference patterns. They've all been taught to defer to Zephyrian wisdom on important matters. They have advanced technology, but no longer trust their own judgment. Admiral Martinez activated a strategic display showing human space and its surroundings. The real problem is what happens if we refuse membership when they offer it. No species has ever turned down Zephyrian protection when it was offered freely. We don't know how they respond to rejection. We need to be ready, said General Hassan Okoye, head of Confederation Defense Forces. If they decide we're a threat to their galactic order, they have the power to relocate us to a more isolated sector. Or worse. Elena stood and activated her own display, showing technological projection charts. I believe we have perhaps 50 years before they make their membership offer. That's how long we have to become strong enough that they'll think twice about forcing the issue. Strong enough to fight the Zephyrians? Dr. Lou Harrison looked incredulous. Elena, they've had 50,000 years to develop their technology. They can move stars if they choose. Not strong enough to fight them, Elena clarified. Strong enough to make them pause. Strong enough that conquest becomes more expensive than coexistence. Strong enough that they'll respect our choice to remain independent. Over the following decade, humanity threw itself into the greatest technological development program in its history. The quantum mathematics they had discovered, the ability to calculate and manipulate the fundamental forces of reality, became the foundation for weapons and defenses the galaxy had never seen. Human scientists worked in deep space laboratories hidden in asteroid fields and gas giant storms. They developed technologies that didn't improve on Zephyrian designs, but completely bypassed them. Where the Zephyrians commanded matter and energy through harmonic resonance, humans learned to rewrite the quantum equations that determined how matter and energy behaved in the first place. Dr. Sarah Kim, working in a secret facility in the Oort cloud, achieved the first breakthrough. She succeeded in creating a localized zone where the fundamental constants of physics were slightly different. Within her laboratory chamber, matter behaved according to modified rules, rules that made Zephyrian technology simply stop functioning. It's not an attack, she explained to her research team. It's more like changing the language the universe speaks. Zephyrian tech is fluent in the standard version of physics. But in altered zones, it's like they're trying to speak English to someone who only understands Chinese. The implications were staggering. Human ships equipped with reality modification fields would be effectively immune to Zephyrian weapons and sensors. More importantly, they could create zones of space where Zephyrian technology was useless, while human quantum mathematical systems worked perfectly. But humanity's leaders were careful not to deploy these technologies prematurely. They continued their diplomatic relations with the Empire, shared improved versions of conventional technology, and appeared to be developing along expected lines. Meanwhile, they quietly built a defensive network that stretched across human space and beyond. 30 years after Elena's embassy to Zephyros Prime, the first test came. A Zephyrian exploration fleet detected unusual quantum signatures in a system at the edge of human space. They dispatched their investigation cruiser to examine the phenomenon. Captain Liu Wei of the human stealth frigate Invisible Hand watched from concealment as the Zephyrian ship approached the system's fourth planet, where human scientists had been conducting reality modification experiments. The moment the cruiser crossed the experimental boundary, its systems began failing. The Zephyrian ship found itself suddenly blind, its sensors unable to penetrate the altered physics zone. Its engines, which relied on space-time manipulation, became erratic and unreliable. Most disturbing of all, its crew discovered that their biological enhancement implants, standard for all Zephyrians, had stopped functioning entirely. Captain Liu watched as the Zephyrian ship withdrew in confusion, its crew no doubt trying to understand what had happened. The experiment had worked perfectly. Human technology could create spaces where Zephyrian superiority simply didn't exist. The incident was reported to the Zephyrian High Council as a localized quantum anomaly of unknown origin. They filed it away as an interesting curiosity and continued their normal operations. They had no reason to suspect that the peaceful, grateful humans they had rescued centuries ago were quietly preparing for war. But in the deepest levels of the human government, preparations accelerated. Elena, now serving as Director of Strategic Defense, authorized the activation of Phase 2 of the Independence Protocol. Across human space, reality modification generators came online, creating an invisible network of zones where human technology worked and Zephyrian technology failed. Humanity was no longer just grateful refugees living on worlds granted by alien charity. They had become something new, a species that could rewrite the rules of existence itself. And they were about to discover whether the galaxy's most powerful empire would allow such a transformation to proceed peacefully. The Zephyrians had taught them that the galaxy was vast and dangerous, full of threats that could destroy entire civilizations. They were absolutely right. But they had failed to realize that sometimes the greatest threat was the species you had saved. The message arrived at Zephyros Prime on a quantum transmission that bypassed every monitoring station in the Empire. It materialized directly in the High Council chambers, carried by mathematical principles that shouldn't have existed. The mere fact of its arrival sent shockwaves through the Zephyrian leadership. High Counselor Vethmaron stared at the hovering hologram, reading humanity's formal declaration with growing disbelief. After 3 centuries of careful guidance and generous protection, their former protégés were announcing their intention to become an independent galactic power. Impossible, whispered Science Director Naelthyra. The quantum bypass transmission alone would require technology we don't possess. How could the humans have developed such capabilities? Vethmaron read the message aloud to the assembled council. To our friends and saviors of the Zephyrian Empire, humanity extends eternal gratitude for your rescue of our species 300 years ago. That gratitude compels us to inform you that we can no longer accept the limitations of protectorate status. We hereby declare our sovereignty over all human settlements and our intention to assist other species as you once assisted us. We request that you respect our decision and Look forward to a future relationship based on equality rather than dependence. The chamber fell silent except for the harmonic resonance of the living crystal walls. Never in 50,000 years had a protectorate species declared independence. The concept was literally outside their experience. They don't understand what they're asking, said military coordinator Kethvar's son, descendant of the original rescuer. Independence means facing cosmic threats alone. The humans remember their dying world. Surely they realize they need our protection. Defense Director Thy Valen activated a strategic display showing human space. The transmission originated from these coordinates, but our sensors show nothing. Either they've developed stealth technology beyond our capabilities, or— He paused, his expression troubled. Or they're transmitting from somewhere our instruments can't perceive. Vethmiran made the decision that would define the next phase of galactic history. Dispatch the 7th Fleet to human space. Not for conquest, for intervention. They clearly don't understand the dangers they're courting. We'll remind them why they need our protection. Admiral Cassandra commanded the 7th Fleet from the battleship Eternal Harmony, a vessel that could sterilize planets or move stars as needed. She had overseen dozens of interventions, species that had grown too aggressive, too independent, too dangerous to themselves and others. The humans would be different because they were former protégés, but the process would be the same, a demonstration of overwhelming force followed by renewed protection under stricter guidelines. The fleet of 300 ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of human territory, their crystal hulls gleaming like captured starlight. Admiral Cassandra opened communications on all frequencies, broadcasting the traditional intervention message. Human settlements. This is Admiral Cassandra of the Zephyrian 7th Fleet. You have declared independence from Imperial protection, demonstrating a dangerous lack of understanding regarding galactic threats. For your own safety and that of neighboring civilizations, we are implementing protective relocation protocols. Please prepare for transport to designated safety worlds where you will be properly protected. The response came not from human ships, but from space itself. Admiral Cassandra, this is Director Elena Vasquez of the Human Confederation Defense Command. We appreciate your concern for our welfare, but we must respectfully decline relocation. We're quite comfortable where we are. Cassandra frowned at her displays. Her sensors showed no human ships, no defensive installations, nothing but empty space around the 3 human worlds. Yet the transmission had come from somewhere directly ahead of her fleet. Human Director, you are speaking from a position of dangerous ignorance. Show yourself for negotiation, or we will be forced to implement protocols without your cooperation. We're already showing ourselves, Admiral. You're looking right at us. That's when space began to change. At first, it was subtle, a slight shimmer in the starlight ahead, like heat distortion in an atmosphere. Then, the distortion spread, racing outward from the human worlds in expanding spheres. Wherever the distortion passed, Zephyrian instruments began registering impossible readings. The laws of physics were changing. Admiral Cassandra watched in growing alarm as her ship's engines began to stutter. The harmonic resonance drives that powered Zephyrian vessels suddenly found themselves operating in a universe where harmonics behaved differently. Navigation systems that relied on space-time manipulation discovered that space-time was no longer responding to their commands. Report, she commanded. Admiral, our quantum harmonizers are offline, came the response from engineering. The resonance frequencies we use don't exist in this region of space. It's as if the fundamental constants have been altered. That's impossible. Physical constants are universal. Apparently not anymore. As the reality distortion continued to expand, Zephyrian technology across the fleet began to fail. Not break down, simply stop working according to the principles it was designed for. Weapon systems found themselves unable to access the energy frequencies they needed. Life support systems struggled as the biological enhancement networks, standard to all Zephyrians, encountered physics that made their function unpredictable. Then, the human ships appeared. They didn't decloak or drop out of hyperspace. They simply became visible, as if they had been there all along, but existing in a slightly different version of reality. Sleek vessels that looked nothing like Zephyrian designs, their hulls marked with mathematical equations that hurt to look at directly. "Admiral," came Elena's voice again, "welcome to humanity's introduction to galactic politics. What you're experiencing is what we call a reality modification field. Within our territorial space, physics works according to human mathematics rather than universal constants. Your technology, which relies on harmonic resonance with standard physical laws, becomes much less effective." Cassandra tried to maintain her composure despite the growing chaos aboard her fleet. "This is some kind of illusion. Physical laws cannot be arbitrarily changed. Can't they?" Elena's voice carried a note of genuine curiosity. "We found that physical laws are really just mathematical descriptions of how reality behaves. Change the mathematics, and reality adapts accordingly. The Zephyrians taught us to work with the universe as it is. We learned to make the universe work with us instead." Human ships began to surround the Zephyrian fleet, moving with impossible grace through the altered physics zones. Their weapons were unlike anything in galactic databases, beams of pure mathematical force that rewrote the quantum structure of whatever they touched. "You're threatening us," Cassandra said, her voice tight with disbelief. "After everything we've done for your species, you're pointing weapons at us." "Not threatening, Admiral. Demonstrating. You came here to relocate us by force. We're showing you why that won't work." To prove her point, Elena ordered a demonstration. A human frigate fired a single shot at an asteroid near the fleet. The beam struck the rock, and it simply stopped being an asteroid. For a moment, it existed as pure mathematical potential, then reformed as a perfect sphere of crystallized space-time. "That's what happens when we apply human mathematics to solid matter," Elena explained. "We can do the same thing to ships, planets, or stars if necessary. But we'd much rather not." Admiral Cassandra found herself in an impossible situation. Her fleet was effectively helpless, trapped in a region of space where their technology barely functioned, while human ships operated with impunity. She could try to withdraw, but the reality modification fields were expanding faster than her crippled ships could escape. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "Recognition," Elena replied. "Acknowledgement that humanity is no longer a protectorate species. We want the same respect you show other galactic powers." Other galactic powers earned that respect through millennia of development and wisdom. You achieved advanced technology in mere centuries. How can we trust that you'll use it responsibly? Elena's response carried a weight that spoke of careful consideration. 300 years ago, the Zephyrians found humans at our worst moment. Our world was dying. Our species was desperate. And we had every excuse to turn on each other in a final orgy of violence. Instead, we chose cooperation. We chose to save everyone we could rather than just ourselves. That's the wisdom you should be evaluating, Admiral. Not our technology, but our character. The standoff continued for hours as Zephyrian High Command tried to understand what had happened. Their most powerful fleet was effectively neutralized by technology that shouldn't exist. Worse, long-range scans revealed that reality modification fields were appearing around human settlements throughout their territory. Humanity had turned their entire space into a region where Zephyrian superiority was meaningless. High Counselor Vethmaran arrived aboard a diplomatic vessel 3 days later, after frantic consultations with the Empire's greatest minds. The humans allowed his ship safe passage, though he quickly discovered that his vessel's systems were as compromised as the fleet's. Elena met him in person aboard a human space station that definitely hadn't existed when the Zephyrian fleet first arrived. The structure was impossible, a complex of buildings that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions, connected by bridges that spanned spaces larger than the station itself. Director Vasquez, Vethmaran said as he stepped into the reception chamber, "You've created an impressive demonstration, but surely you understand that the galaxy contains threats your new technology cannot address." "Perhaps," Elena agreed, "but We'll face those threats as free beings making our own choices, not as children being protected by benevolent guardians. Vethmiran gestured with all four arms in the Zephyrian expression of deep confusion. Why would you choose danger over safety? Why risk extinction when we offer you security? Elena smiled sadly. Because safety isn't the highest value humans recognize, counselor. We value choice. We value the right to succeed or fail based on our own decisions. Your protection is generous, but it comes at the cost of our agency. And if you fail, if your independence leads to your destruction, then we'll have failed as free beings. That's a risk we're willing to accept. The negotiations that followed lasted weeks. Humanity demonstrated technologies that violated Zephyrian understanding of what was possible, while the Zephyrians explained the cosmic threats that had destroyed countless civilizations. Slowly, both sides began to understand each other's perspective. The breakthrough came when Elena made an offer that surprised even the human negotiation team. We propose a partnership, she said during one crucial session. Not membership in your empire, but cooperation between equals. You know where the threats are and have 50,000 years of experience dealing with them. We have capabilities your technology can't match. Together, we could protect civilizations more effectively than either of us could alone. Vethmiran was quiet for a long moment. What would such partnership entail? Joint response to galactic emergencies. Shared intelligence on cosmic threats. Most importantly, giving rescued civilizations real choices about their futures rather than making those choices for them. Many species prefer our guidance. They find freedom overwhelming. Then, they can choose to remain under Zephyrian protection, Elena agreed. But others might prefer independence or partnership arrangements that preserve their autonomy. The key is giving them genuine options. The final agreement took 6 months to negotiate and changed the fundamental structure of galactic civilization. The Treaty of New Geneva established humanity as a sovereign power with territorial integrity guaranteed by their reality modification capabilities. More importantly, it created a new framework for dealing with struggling civilizations, one that offered multiple paths to safety rather than just Zephyrian protection. Admiral Cassandra was among the first Zephyrian officers to serve aboard a joint human-Zephyrian rescue fleet. She found herself working alongside Captain Maria Santos-Chun, great-great-granddaughter of the original refugee fleet captain. It's strange, Cassandra admitted as they responded to a distress call from the Rigel sector. For 50,000 years, we've known the right way to handle these situations. Now you humans have us questioning everything. Maria smiled. Not questioning everything, Admiral. Just questioning whether there's only one right way. The Zephyrians saved my family's lives. That will never change. But maybe the galaxy is big enough for multiple approaches to salvation. The mission was a success. They saved the Rigelian civilization from a stellar collapse, but instead of automatically relocating them to Zephyrian protection worlds, they offered options. The Rigelians chose to accept human technology that would let them evacuate to a star system of their own choosing, maintaining their independence while gaining the knowledge they needed to avoid future disasters. 6 months later, when a massive space storm threatened to sterilize an entire galactic arm, it was human reality modification technology working alongside Zephyrian harmonic resonance that saved billions of lives. The storm was redirected into empty space using principles neither species could have managed alone. Elena, now serving as the first human ambassador to the Zephyrian Empire, stood in the gallery of the High Council chambers watching the vote on the Universal Freedom Protocol, new guidelines that would give all rescued civilizations genuine choices about their futures. The measure passed by a significant margin, supported by progressive Zephyrians who had come to see wisdom in the human perspective. You've changed us, Vethmiran said after the session ended. 50,000 years of certainty, and you humans have taught us to doubt our own methods. Not doubt them, Elena corrected. Question them. Improve them. The Zephyrians saved humanity when we were helpless. Now we're helping save others from helplessness itself. the helplessness of having no choices. As she spoke, Elena looked out through the chamber's reality windows at the galaxy beyond. Thousands of civilizations continued to thrive under Zephyrian protection, but dozens of others were now choosing different paths: human partnership, independent development, or hybrid arrangements that preserved autonomy while providing security. The galaxy was becoming more complex, more chaotic, and undeniably more free. 300 years after 12 refugee ships fled a dying Earth, humanity had not only survived but fundamentally altered galactic civilization. They had repaid their debt to the Zephyrians in the most human way possible, by ensuring that no other species would ever again have to choose between survival and freedom. The Zephyrians had saved humanity's bodies. Humanity had saved everyone's souls. And in the vast spaces between stars, reality itself had become more flexible, more responsive to the mathematical dreams of beings who refused to accept that the universe's rules could not be rewritten by those brave enough to question them. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, Elena thought as she watched ships from a dozen species work together to plant new stars in the cosmic void, was exactly as it should be.